wanted to wear one of these. Makes me like, I feel like a rock star now or something. Let me put this on in a second. Okay. I'm gonna test that, make sure that's working. Hello, everybody. My name is Marek Forysiak. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Russlavbank. Some of you may be familiar with us. We're also the primary owner of Contact Payment Systems. Suren is one of my prime competitors in the Russia CIS market. He actually did a very good job talking about a number of aspects related to our business. I was going to talk about some of those as well, so I'll just briefly go through that because it doesn't make sense to kind of go through many of those details. But I was asked today to talk about value and the creation of sustainable value. And one of the things that we'll look at, which is similar to what Suren discussed, was how margins in our payments business have been declining. And how do you look at that dynamic and continue to build franchise value? You know, for those of you that were here yesterday and listened to some of our retail colleagues that were talking about the evolution process, branches, some of you may have heard them talk about the lack of value in the payments industry. I'm glad to hear that because I'm in the payments industry, and when I have individuals or organizations that technically I look at as potential threats to compete against me in capturing payments business, remittance business, I was a little bit happy to hear that. Because I don't have to worry about those guys in the near term. But just something more to think about when it comes to value in the payments and remittance space. Two transactions that took place in the last 90 days, just so that you recognize value. Kiwi, if you're familiar with Kiwi, most of you are. Kiwi's public offering within the last 30 days, U.S. publicly listing, market capitalization of $1.2 billion. It's a payments company. Another payment company called Zoom, pure play remittance company, which is, I think, about half the size of Kiwi, maybe about half the size, maybe 1/3 the size of Contact. They listed in, I believe it was late April, early May of this year. Their market capitalization is $725 million. So when people talk about value, it's important to understand what is somebody's perceived sense of value and what is real value. And those listings are actual listings. You can go look at the websites, the SEC websites, and understand what those businesses look like, where their value comes from, and how does the market assess that value today. And the other thing that I want to just say from the outset, this is my view on how to build sustainable value in a payments remittance system, given the evolution that has been taking place for the last 10 years. And we heard about that yesterday. We've heard a lot about that today. And I was asked 3 years ago by the principal owner of this group to do exactly this. So it's not just my view about how I perceive value, how I perceive the evolution that is taking place in Russia and CIS, because I think it's happening very quickly. Much quickly than some of our colleagues recognize. You always have to be careful not to fall in love with your own business, because sometimes that business needs to change. And then lastly, this is something that is actually ongoing. So I just wanted to start off with that. Very quickly, we had a quick vision, or I developed a vision about 3 years ago. And at the end of the day, what we do at Contact is we help people move money. We connect people by the way they move money. So at the end of the day, we have to think about how people earn money, what people do with their money, and then how do we connect people vis-a-vis helping them move their money around the world. And in order for us to successfully do that, we needed to think about all of the consumer behaviors and ensure that in every one of those instances, we had the necessary tools that would allow for those customers to connect and connect in a way that they're moving money, in whatever form that is. So when you look at our businesses, have physical locations. Some people like to physically come with their cash, and we need to intermediate customers with cash who want to put cash into the payment system. And we do that through a number of different mechanisms. We've got contact centers, physical locations, not as many as Suren has, but we have our own contact centers. We have our own self-service payment terminals, deployed around the country. We've got also all of our online tools that a customer would need. Contact 24, if anybody wants to take a look at it or sign up for our self-service payment utilities, as well as all of the other aspects or other tools that consumers would use in order for them to move money, either a payment, money transfer, etc. So again, the nature of our business, comprehensive, and it includes all of the necessary tools. Competitive advantages, I'm not going to kind of go through there. Obviously, we are one of the leaders in the region. We'll show that. Suren talked a little bit about the size of the market. Him and I can argue whether he's bigger than I am, whether I'm bigger than he is. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter, because we'll talk about the size of the industry overall. Again, just one more aspect with regards to our leadership position, because leadership is important. And one of the dynamics in the payments industry is how ubiquitous are you? And it's one of the key competitive advantages, or one of those advantages that allows for us to sustain and also act as a barrier for entry. And for us, that's represented by our distribution outlets. Remember the nature of our business. People come into physical locations. We help map that process, move the money from point A to point B. But again, you need to have point A to point B, where customers actually put the money into the system, and then how customers get money out of the system. And you can see Unistream's a little bit bigger. I think Suren says you guys are up to about 300,000. Congratulations. We're probably around 200,000, and this number fluctuates back and forth. But at the end of the day, these are really the primary competitors that you see in this region. Suren talked about the global remittance and payments industry. And I just want to look at that from an opportunity point of view. Because when you look at where and how remittances have grown, this translates into, a combined annual growth rate of 11% per year for the last 10 years. And this is projected to continue for a number of reasons. And so then talked about the migrant workforce becoming much more mobile around the world. And today that statistic, according to the World Bank, is somewhere around 2 to 2.5% of migrants working outside of their home country. And the projections on the migrant workforce moving over the next 3 to 5 years is that number is going to double, from a 2.5% to a 5% level. And Surin already alluded to that earlier, which is one of the primary drivers behind, this growth rate. Now, inevitably, the corridors that are driving that will probably change. The U.S. to Mexico corridor is probably not a corridor that's going to grow dramatically. But what you'll probably see is a further continuation of migrants coming out of the subcontinent, migrants coming out of Central Asia, migrants coming out of China. And as depending on those migration flows, those will become the primary corridors. But from a value point of view, it's interesting to note that this $550 billion, and these are World Bank statistics, has the size of one segment. This is the person-to-person, cash-to-cash, cross-border remittance business. And if you look at that as a total value, World Bank again tells you what was the average cost this is as of March 2013, so pretty recently. The average person paid about 9% to move money. $200 transaction, cross-border, person-to-person, cash-to-cash. That translates into almost $50 billion in value. Just out of this segment alone. Now remember, this does not include domestic cash-to-cash, person-to-person, which is another segment altogether. This doesn't include payments and payment processing. And as you know, when you look at, and if you add that value, this number exponentially grows. As a consequence, that opportunity is why organizations like Kiwi, organizations like Zoom are being rewarded with very, very high multiples. Much, much higher than traditional bank multiples from a value point of view. Surin did allude to the fact that Russia CIS is somewhat unique in the sense that we are a fraction of this number. We are most likely in this region down around 3.5% to 4%. And Surin talked about 1.5% to 2%, and he's right. But he's probably missing part of it because there's foreign exchange and there's other aspects to the revenue dynamic that brings the total cost of money transfer up to about total value about 4%, 3.5% to 4%. It's also important to understand how we make money, because there's at least 3 constituents or participants in that sharing in that revenue stream. You've got the guy on the front end that's accepting the transaction, right? You've got the guy on the back end that is dispersing the money, and then you've got guys like Unistream, Contact, et cetera, in the middle. And we have to decide how that revenue gets split. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like from a net average yield to our business. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the evolving landscape, and I try to keep it really simple, right? In my presentations, again, because I think there's really 3 phases to this development continuum. There's pre-crisis 2008, and again, this is my own assessment. I mean, this is my business and my assessment of the industry that took place. I joined the organization right here. So I've been with this group now for 3 years, and I was responsible for taking what is a post-crisis survivor and trying to rationalize and create a sustainable business going forward. But at the end of the day, pre-crisis, specialty providers, Contact, Unistream, et cetera, we weren't all that sophisticated. The technology level that we had, actually pretty low. At the end of the day, there were very few barriers for entry. Any bank could have offered up a payment system, and there was a lot of them that existed. Capital was high in the marketplace. Everybody was borrowing money. I was the CEO of Renaissance Credit, and I was the CEO from Renaissance for just over 4 years, and took a small little consumer lending business in Russia that had about $200 million in retail assets, and I built that to be one of the second largest consumer finance companies in the region, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, with over $4.2 billion in assets, and we grew that portfolio in a 2.5-year period of time. So I'm pretty certain that capital was pretty available in the marketplace. And at the end of the day, there was very little interest in this business, Russia CIS, pre-crisis, because they're making a lot of money on everything else. This business, for the most part, is not a real sexy business. So when you meet the bankers in Russia, they want to do asset management. They want to be the investment bankers. They want to do the corporate lending. These opportunities presented themselves, whether it's the consumer lending business, mass retail, whether it's payments, as a consequence of this not being a very interesting business. So as a result, we didn't really build the best organizations to survive. And then, of course, the crisis came. This 2009, 2010 period, and you could see this is the way the value went in our businesses. We didn't really have any issues with growth, but then the crisis came, and you had a number of dynamics. First of all, capital was limited in some cases, eliminated in the marketplaces in this region specifically. Migrant movement was significantly curtailed during that period of time. Margin businesses came under incredible pressure. So what does that mean? Banks that were lending were losing money in their lending business. And I know that because this organization, Russlavbank, used to be a lender as well. And I think we're still paying for some of those historical activities. So banks figured out they need to turn the lights on. They need to turn the lights on. Even at Renaissance Credit, our lending went from 100 loans per day to 2 loans per day. But I had 13,000 people working for me across 3 countries. I needed to pay the bills. So what did? We started getting into the payments business. We've got all these outlets. Let's start accepting payments. Let's do cross-border remittance. So all of these people, jump into the foray. And then remember, I talked about distribution outlets. It was the primary growth driver for every one of the remittance providers. They grew their distribution business, more outlets capturing transactions. The value of the total transactions that they were acquiring over a period of time grew. This period comes, distribution outlets were being cut. Branches were being closed. It's just a reality across the region. And then again, you started to see, as even Sudan also alluded to, non-banks started to gain an interest into payment processing and money transfer. And why did they do that? These non-banks, these telecom companies, mobile operators, whatever they were, they had all these stores. Again, they needed to generate revenue in those stores. And historically, if you remember, pre-crisis, they were selling loans. Sveznoy in Russia was at Renaissance Credit was one of the largest intermediaries for me for credit. They would have originated in 2008, and they did originate well over $500 million in credits. So again, they needed to replace their revenue streams as well. They decided they're going to get into payment processing and remittances. And then, of course, now you've got what I kind of largely consider the who are these post-crisis survivors. And the whole dynamic changed in the marketplace. We've got the renewed capital flows. We've got the migrant flows coming back. But the consumers changed. The consumers, some of them were thrown out of the banking industry or the banking sector for reasons that we probably all understand. They used to borrow money. They stopped paying, and banks threw them out. You also had other participants that were also dislocated from the banking sector. They lost their jobs. So you had customers now starting to think about a concept which was pay as you go. So they're gonna pay for a transaction when they use that transaction. They're just not gonna buy the services anymore and have the ability to transact whenever they wanted to transact. So it's a new concept going on in the marketplace. Technology and consumer behaviors beginning to converge. And they talked about that yesterday. 10, 15 years ago, again, a lot of these technologies existed that we're talking about: mobile technology, internet technology, self-service technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what you're now actually starting to see is the convergence of those technologies that are out there and consumers and the behaviors of the consumers demanding those services today. And so that convergence between consumer behaviors and technologies, obviously you have a continued deterioration, in the remittance rates in our region, although globally you don't see that occurring. And then of course, all of this manifests itself into a fundamental shift in order for an organization to survive. And remember what I started here. We were a business-to-business focused organization. We needed to change to become what's called DTC, direct-to-consumer. So we needed to begin to create an affinity with those customers that were using our services. Otherwise, we would not survive. Again, we needed to understand who are our customers and begin to approach our customers very differently. Before 2010, when I joined this organization, we never even said thank you to a customer who used our services. Never said thank you. We capture data, name, passport information. We capture a mobile phone number. We have to, right? If there's a problem with a transaction, we need to contact the customer. But why don't we just send that customer, an SMS message saying thank you? Just say thank you. They'll understand contact is there. More importantly, when you get a thank you message, first of all, you feel good that somebody said thank you, but more importantly, that also serves as a confirmation of a transaction taking place. So again, the whole organization, the people in our organization needed to change, because they were all business-to-business focused, building distribution, never once thought about what do we do with a customer. Again, this just talks about who we are, where we do business, where we kind of fall. And I would probably believe Unistream is in this same category, where our average customer, remittance customer, moves about $520, and our average payment customer moves $420. So be very careful when you start, because I made the mistake. I thought we have nothing but migrants. They call them these Gastarbeiters. Still don't know what that means. But all these migrants from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, that's what I thought this business was. And then I looked at this. And again, the organization never did this before. So we started to turn around and say, actually, people, I'm sure, like all of us, are actually using these types of services. So it's much different than what we had originally perceived as the customers utilizing our services. So what did we do? And this is my own development, whereby we built what's called a payments ecosystem, whereby we needed to think about how do we acquire customers. So when we think about payments, when we think about money transfer, let's think about that as an acquisition channel for us. An acquisition channel that actually makes money. Most acquisition channels, as our marketing folk over there, Andre from Platinum Bank would probably tell you, as he had said, they probably pay. It's a cost. We're acquiring customers that make us money. And at Renaissance Credit, our acquisition strategy was POS lending. Every single POS lending customer that I acquired cost me anywhere from 4 to 6%. From 4 to 6%. These guys, I'm making money here. But again, it's a low-value transaction. I assessed it as a low-value transaction. I assess it as a low-value transaction because my payments margin, my payments net average yield, 25 basis points on a transaction. Remember, we talk about 9%, then in Russia's CIS, maybe 3.5%. My net average yield on that transaction, 25 basis points on a payment. On a remittance transaction, it's a little bit higher value. It's about 50 basis points. So again, when you start thinking about the continuum, again, it's low value to high value. And what do I want to be able to do is I want to understand who are those customers. I want to segment those customers in order for me to offer them products and services, whether they're my products, whether they're other banking partner products. Because again, I have banking partners. You know, I got banks in Rostov that have no retail lending business, whereby I see their customers, they want to offer them retail loans, and I do it for them through my payments ecosystem, and they pay me for that. So again, it's not only me, but it's also the partners that I do business with. And you could see what that continuum looks like. You know, when I can lend to these customers, I can earn as much as 1,000 basis points on that customer from a net margin point of view. That's where the value comes from in this business. A very simple step change. You know, we kind of call it our e-wallet, electronic wallet. But really what it is, it's a self-service utility, Contact 24. The value of a customer using a self-service platform, to me, increases my net average yield from about 51 basis points to about 82 basis points. So I make more money if a customer self-serves. Why? I don't have to pay all these other guys on the front end or the back end. Right? Self-serve, I only got to pay the guy on the back end, or vice versa, depending on what the customer's doing. So again, it's about recognizing what the customer's doing, understanding what the customer's buying, where he sees value, and then at the same time looking to maximize our own value, because we are 100% in this business, you know, to make money. In 2013, this ecosystem, we will process over 22 million transactions in 2013. That will translate into over 350,000 unique customers every month. Now, that doesn't mean we can access all of those customers. That doesn't mean every one of those customers are available. Some of those customers are in the Ukraine. Some of those customers are in Europe. Some of those customers are in the US. So I'm limited on the scope of services that I could offer them. I'm not licensed to do it. In Russia, I'm licensed for the whole vertical. I can offer them a payment transaction. I can offer them remittance. I can offer them electronic wallet. I can offer them a prepaid card. I can offer them insurance. I can offer them credit. You name it. I can offer them anything. Whether it's your product or my product, I don't really care as long as I make money on it. It's something I'd like to do in the Ukraine with somebody if possible, because my ecosystem can support a lending business in the Ukraine as well. But for now, this exists entirely in Russia, this ecosystem. We're 3 years into the development process. And just order of magnitude, this year we will lend over $800 million to retail customers coming out of this payments ecosystem, and done in a way that is absolutely not competitive with any of our partners. Remember, if my partners viewed me as a threat, if they viewed me as a threat, I wouldn't have gone today from being here around 3 billion in volume. By the end of 2013, I will process over 8 billion. So if my competitors thought that I was a threat to them, that wouldn't be happening. So again, we're very conscious of our partners. We're very conscious of who are their customers. And we never encroach. We try not to encroach on those customers. And we make a mistake every once in a while. We apologize, and we try not to do it again. How to show. So again, this is the way we've developed the ecosystem. The last item around order of magnitude, 'cause I talked about the lending side. Our revenues, our net revenue in 2010 from this business was $12 million. Our net revenue today, and that was it. There was really no lending business at Russlavbank. It's small to medium size, family money, non-sustainable, bad business. We changed all of that. 12 million coming out of this payment system. In 2013, our payment system, remittance payment processing, will generate in the excess of $40 million in net revenues. That's this business alone right here. This business, which didn't exist, will generate over $60 million in net revenue. That's the value of this business. And we all have the opportunity to do that in one way, shape, or form. Again, I don't want to go through this, but this is the product continuum. You need to recognize what your customers are doing. What are the services that they're looking for, and you need to deliver. And you need to deliver those services to them. And that's what this alludes to right here. And yes, sometimes we almost give away our services in order to identify customers that have the greatest propensity to buy our additional products and services. We would never give this rate to somebody that wouldn't buy second or third products from us. So there's a little bit of thinking that goes along with these promotional types of activities. We've got our open prepayment network, we've got Contact 24, prepaid cards, all those things necessary for you to represent being a comprehensive payment service provider. And again, this has taken us over 3 years to build, and we're still not finished. It's about a 5-year project for us. Again, the value cross-selling, we heard a little bit about that as you move customers, once again, from low value to high value. Again, this is our response to the evolution that's taking place in the market, right? We are, in essence, a banking alternative for that consumer who wants to pay as you go and buy services on a needs basis. And again, we think, we threw the book out the door when we do this. So you got I like old approach and new approach, right? We got old branches, the old approach, you got branches, right? New approach, we have no branches. I don't need branches. I've got 12,000 bank branches in Russia already through my partners. Why would I ever think about opening a branch in Russia? Why? Current accounts, we kind of call those an electronic wallet. We don't call it a current account. We call it an electronic wallet. That's what our consumers recognize today. We don't call it a debit card. Debit card's attached to a current account, which means it's my salary deposit. We have a prepaid card. And we sell we're up to about 28,000 prepaid cards sold monthly today. Deposits and interest, they're rewards. I don't know about you, but this dynamic is falling. Interest rates, in Russia are not getting much better. So actually, we find a lot of customers responding to us giving them rewards in various shape. And some of those may actually be interest. Some of those could be cash. Some of those could be money to their mobile phone. So again, the reward structure needs to take a slightly different approach than what the classic bankers think about. And loans and credits, we kind of call that advances. A remittance customer, a non-resident who's been doing business with us for 12 or 18 months, in December, they have a holiday season as well. Why not advance? If they do $200, $300 or 10,000 ruble transfers every month, and they've done it with us for 12, 18 months, why not give them an opportunity to send 20,000 rubles? Has anybody thought about that? We do it. And again, that's where we create value. Now, that customer pays for that. And it's not cheap for him to get that 10,000 rubles, but we give him an opportunity, potentially, if he wants to be able to access that. So again, in summary, I want to be brief. The mobile technologies, payments are accelerating, innovation is driving all this. Again, combined, with the customer demand, that's really not fully understood yet. And at the end of the day, the non-bank participants, are really at the center. When you look at those that are in the payments processing business, the remittance business, the information that they have, the wealth of information they have on how customers move money is just incredible. And again, over time, my view is that they will play an even stronger and more critical role in this evolution process. And as I said yesterday, some of the comments that we heard really, I think, is that we're viewed as a threat to banks. So some of the comments about the role and the survivability and sustainability of branch-based businesses, you kind of center on this lack of recognition as to where and how the industry is really evolving. And it's evolving here in this marketplace. So pay attention to the non-bank alternative service providers in the financial services industry, because they're leaner, they're bigger than they've ever been before. They've got brands. The Unistream, Contact. These are well-known, recognized brands around the world. These are organizations that are rated. We're Moody's rated. Not that great, but we're B3 rated. We've been audited, by KPMG since 1996. So these are not small operators that have the ability to play a very significant and dominant role. And as a consequence of that, recognize and create massive value. That's what I have. Thank you very much.